What is something you swear you saw, but have no proof of? When I was 11 years old, on my first round of golf on an actual golf course, not chip and putt or mini golf, with my dad and 2 of his friends, I hit a ball that bounced off a little hump in front of the green and rolled behind the hump where we assumed it was in the rough. But the green and the hole were obscured by said hump, so you had to go down to the actual green to tell where your shot had landed. It was by far my best shot of the day. I had struggled to even make contact and hit the ball further than 20 feet at times, so I went bounding down to the green to find my ball but saw nothing. Everyone else took their shot, and as they were walking down to the green, I looked in the hole and there was my ball. I even thought that maybe it was the previous group and someone had left their ball in the hole, but it was exact ball I had bought in the pro shop before the round. I jumped up and down and told my dad and his friends, and they were basically like, yeah right kid, no way. And my dad's one buddy even said he thought there was a chance it could have gone in. But my dad did not buy it and to this day refuses to believe I hit a hole in one on my first round of golf. I'm proud of you, son. When I was just 2 or 3 years old, I remember playing outside in the backyard with my grandpa. We owned a huge empty field. I remember seeing a huge white rabbit, think Alice in Wonderland, hopping around, human-sized, maybe 20 feet away from me. I started running towards it, looked back to my grandpa, looked back to the rabbit, and it was gone. Crazy dream, huh? My grandpa passed away a few years later. We had to move because we could no longer afford the rent. Raised my grandparents. We were looking at the house that we ended up buying. 7 acres of woods, long driveway, and a big yard that was field. Walking down the big driveway, I heard a rustle in a bush. Thinking it was a deer, I looked out of excitement. It was the same rabbit. Immediate deja vu. Nobody else saw it, but they heard it. About 6 years later, we had moved again. I remember looking out the window around Easter time and seeing this rabbit yet again. Nobody else has ever seen it, but my grandma can confirm. I've talked about it for as long as I could talk. Toddler me saw something that nobody else has. I don't believe in the spiritual or anything, but I saw something, and I'd love an explanation one day. I swear on everything that matters to me, I saw a goddamn 5 feet tall rabbit thrice in my life. I was on a road trip through Southern California on Highway 1, and at one point I looked over and there was a herd of zebras galloping in the field alongside the road. No one I tell believes me. It's gotten to the point where I wonder if I just fabricated this memory somehow. Yeah, this was real. They are at Hearst Castle in San Simeon, California. The paddock is right along Highway 1. A bright whiteout one morning I was walking to work. It was almost 4 AM. I was on the phone with my husband and we both went silent as he was driving home, and we both saw the whole sky lit up so bright everything around us disappeared like a simulation. Sidewalk, road, and basically everything vanished. Wasn't a dream either. I ran the rest of the way to work freaking out and no one at my job saw it. Later that night I was looking for reports and only one person reported it about 2 hours away from where I live around the same time I was walking to work. Was listed as unconfirmed sighting. I stopped walking to work after that. I've heard about meteors was causing this when breaking up in the atmosphere. At a family lunch I saw my uncle, through marriage, finish his food and then eat a large, crumpled up paper napkin. No one else noticed. No one believes me. They all think it must have been a piece of flatbread. It is infuriating. I know what I saw, and the man did not wipe his hands and mouth on a piece of goddamn flatbread. I love the clarification that he's an uncle by marriage, so we don't think you descend from napkin eating people yourself. I saw someone have a seizure, but she believes she just fainted and has no memory of her arms and legs and head jerking. Her family also doesn't believe me. They're all in denial. I'm afraid she may be driving someday and seriously injure herself or someone else if she has another seizure. I work with a guy who, if he gets injured, he faints and convulses. He broke his ankle at work and that's what happened. He woke up a few minutes later and his wife had to come by to drive him to the hospital because of the ankle. And she said, yeah, he's a fainter. Does that all the time. The inside of a tornado. I was in an underground storm shelter with a 8-inch bulletproof glass window on the ceiling, and a tornado went right over us in Moore, Oklahoma, and from the inside of the tornado you can literally see all the way up to a sunny sky and white clouds. I bet there are other people who've seen that, they just didn't live to tell about it. I work in special education as a para and a lot of people underestimate and disregard my kiddos, so this kinda happens all the time. Here's a fun one. I worked with a kindergartner with Down syndrome who was described to me by his case manager as having the mind of a 1-year-old, whatever that means. Which, I get what that means, lol. I just find it better sometimes to let a new kid show me what they can do before I make assumptions about anything. Anyway, for a while my schedule included hanging out with him in the main office while we waited for his mom to pick him up at the end of the day. One day the sun was shining really brightly through the window and he looked at the light on the floor, got excited, and started making really sophisticated and complex two-hand shadow puppets. He made a few for me, but the one I remember was a hopping rabbit. No one believes me and he consistently refused to do it for anyone else. I choose to believe he's deliberately fricking with me because that is the funnest possible explanation. A man without a shirt on running through my house at 3 AM while I was doing a water change, so I had to leave the back door open. I come down to yelling and see a half-naked man running circles around my house. I was the only one home, so to this day no one thinks it happened. A mountain lion. I was at the cemetery visiting my grandma for the first time since she passed away. I was sitting there crying and kept hearing noises in the woods behind me. After a while I looked over and saw a mountain lion walking up the hill away from me. I was on my feet before it even registered. There were some old men I'd come in with, and on my way to the car I stopped and told them. They assured me it was a deer, but I know it was a big cat. It moved like a cat and had a long tail. It was not a deer. Lots of people thought I was seeing things, but we have a family friend who worked at the Department of Conservation who believed it. They follow the rivers apparently, so now I maintain, and my grandpa agrees, that my grandma sent me a mountain lion to get me to stop weeping at her grave. It's very on brand for her. I live in a state where people say there are no mountain lions, but there are totally mountain lions, and I almost hit one with my car. Everyone tells me it was a deer too, but I watched its face turn to me as my brakes started screeching and then run away. A wolverine when I was living in western Montana. I only saw it for a moment before it disappeared, but I know that's what it was. I've met more people who claim to have seen Bigfoot than who have seen a wild wolverine. Sometimes I forget that a wolverine is an actual animal and not just the Marvel character. On a lunch break, I grabbed a pair of scissors and cut a fly in half mid-flight. I was so shocked. Nobody believed me. A movie that I can never remember the name of and the person I went with has no idea what I'm talking about. I probably saw the movie when I was 7 and I can't remember anything that really happened, but I can visualize the characters. It was Ponyo. Now I'm going to see if I can go watch it online. PFFT, just create a post describing everything you can remember on one of the movie subs. Include the year it came out, if you saw it in theaters. Someone will edit. I was part of a youth leadership training program as a teenager. You spend a week doing courses and training, then at the end they send you out into the woods alone with your messmates for a day and a night. We were backpacking to our campsite. We were on our own, deep in the redwoods. I was in the rear, alone, and I glanced back down the path we were hiking along. There was a bear about 50 feet behind us crossing the road. He stopped and looked at me. I stopped and looked at him, and then we both went our separate ways. Nobody believed me. A UFO, not an alien, just a flying thing I couldn't categorize. Nighttime, it was flying low, triangular shape when above me with bright lights, like a lot of them. Could tell it was low by its size, roughly a fighter jet, and I could make out the shape of the lights real well, but it made almost zero sound. I could only hear the sound of air moving out of its way, like it was a glider. Too big to be a drone, at least not a commercial or industrial one. I've used those. Too quiet to be a plane. IDK. Any aviators aerotech have an idea? Weird skinless creature on the back porch. Had no head. Looked like a doggish creature with a short tail. I had just brought the dog in. Turned around to lock the door and it was just there. I have never locked a door so fast in my life. An albino man pushing a dwarf in a shopping cart through a vacant gravel lot. In the middle of the day. My daughter saw it too. The future. I keep a dream journal since I like to try lucid dreaming when it happens, so I write down my dreams the minute I wake up. I had a dream that was one of those typical daydreams. In my dream I woke up and had my coffee and drove to work. In the dream a coyote ran across the road in front of my car on the way to work, and then I ran a red light. When I got to work, my keycard for the door didn't work and I had to wait outside until someone showed up to let me in. My co-worker, who usually gets in later in the morning, showed up early, a few minutes after I arrived, and let me in. I commented about how he's there early and he mentioned he had some purchases to make. We made small talk and then got to work. Some uneventful time later I had a meeting with my boss where we discussed a new client and my performance review, where they offered me a raise. After this I packed up and drove home. When I got home, my wife was in the kitchen and the oven had broken, so she made canned soup for dinner. Then we went to bed. At this point, I woke up. I got out of bed and wrote this all down in my dream journal as I usually do, and went to work. On my way to work, a coyote crossed the road in front of my car, and then I ran a red light. When I got to work, my keycard wouldn't open the front door. My usually late co-worker arrived early and let me in. Later in the day my boss called me into a meeting to discuss a new client, and we went over my performance and discussed a raise. I packed up and went home, and found my wife making canned soup in the microwave. The new oven had stopped working. I didn't even think about this until the day after this happened. I hadn't really cemented the dream I had and I just wrote it all out from memory like I always do. It wasn't particularly notable at all. It wasn't until the day after that I realized what had happened when I read my writing from the day before. I had written out the entirety of the day I experienced, before I had ever experienced it. I showed the journal to my wife, who thought it must have just been coincidence. This was probably the case, but dang, it's a lot of coincidences to be happening all at once. I still have the journal and I write in it almost every day. The page day that happened on is bookmarked. I have so many of these, dude, it's so weird. I've never admitted it because I believe in rationality and science. Don't want to be viewed as a weirdo, but I saw 3 glowing orbs at night in a triangle formation, then they merged into one orb. It hovered a few seconds, then with lightning speed just disappeared. I was just in awe. Didn't occur to me to capture it on my phone. Wish I did. As a rule I don't believe in ghosts or any other supernatural stuff, but I do have a ghost story of sorts. It isn't very dramatic, but at the time I was freaked the frick out and more than a little confused. A few years ago at Beverly Beach State Park in Newport, Oregon, I was walking with my dog along this trail that runs along a fairly large creek to the left and a fairly steep hill filled with brush to the right. I was pretty close to the campground. I could still see the RVs and tents through the trees on the other side of the creek. As I was walking along I saw another kid about my age, 14ish, and all by myself and feeling a bit lonely. I thought I'd approach him. About 50 feet away from him though, my dog starts panic barking. I mean freaking the frick out. His hackles are raised, teeth bared, tail tucked, feet against the ground. Usually my dog is as friendly as he can be. I'd never seen him act this way before and so I was stunned. I tug on his leash and with all my strength, but my dog doesn't want to take a step closer to this kid. Finally I drag him past, giving the kid a wide berth, and manage to pull my dog around the kid and further along the trail. As I passed him by I apologize for my dog's behavior and the kid says nothing. He just stares at me, head slowly tracking us, almost like it would in a horror movie. As soon as the kid is out of sight, doggo immediately relaxes, wagging his tail and happy as a clam at high tide. Baffled, something in me forces me to turn around and walk back towards the kid, wondering what could have made my dog act like that. Yeah, I'd probably be the first to die in a horror movie. The kid's gone. I mean gone, and I have no idea where he could have went where I wouldn't have seen heard him. Even if he'd taken off at a dead sprint down the long straightaway and towards the next corner in the 30 seconds my back was turned, I feel like I would have seen him. And thanks to the creek hillside surrounding us, there really was only one way to go. I suppose it's most likely that some shy kid terrified of dogs was equally scared shitless of me and my dog as we were of him. But everyone I tell this story to that's the type to believe in ghosts are absolutely certain this was dog sensing and evil spirit. Well, evil spirits are way more common than scared 14-year-olds, so that's just playing the odds. At home alone one night and my dog started growling at the front door, hackles up and teeth showing. He crept up to look out the peephole and saw something. It was humanoid, but unnaturally tall and thin, and dark red over in the security light, and its entire body sort of swayed, undulating like a snake. I saw this clear as frick. I jumped back from the door, hyperventilated a bit, then went to look again, and it was gone. The dog stopped growling, no idea what it was, and proof at all it was there, but I swear blind whatever it was, I saw it. That sounds freaking horrific. I read a book when I was little about a rocking horse that came to life at night or something. I remember that the main character put ointment on its wounds. That's it. That is all the memory I remember, but I cannot find this book short story. I have looked and it's nowhere. At a 150,000 person music festival, dude drops his pants next to a stage in the daytime to pee. When he's done, steps out of his shoes and starts walking off in a grassy area behind the stage. As he's walking off, crosses paths with another guy, who as they meet, pantless guy slaps his hat off his head. Hat guy turns around to get his hat, or something, but just sees pantless guy's butt and nuts bent over picking up his hat. Hat guy just waves his hand like frick it. Pantless guy puts the hat on backwards and keeps strolling off into the sunset. Shakes the security barricades till they fall and leaves the festival into downtown Miami. I assume he ended up in jail. Kim Thale of Soundgarden sitting off stage at a dive bar in Denton, Texas, sitting on an amp playing a guitar at seriously high volume, jamming along with the band who was on stage, but staying out of the picture, low-key and incognito. Denton, Texas, spring of 1987. Only a few people knew who he was and understood what we were witnessing, and we all kept our cool. Went to college in Denton and this sounds super believable to me, lol. My friend being hit by a car but the car just went right through her, almost as if she was a ghost. I swear it hit her but she was unharmed and all good. You're probably a ghost. My husband swears he saw Sasquatch, late 70s. He went out hunting early. It was before sunrise. I've heard him tell this story countless times, and people give him crap about it all the time, but his story has never changed. I believe him. A UFO. I was in my early 20s. It was a family vacation at an amusement park, and my dad and I were in the front car of a roller coaster. It was a clear night. As we were clicking up the first drop, in the sky a very bright light came forward out of space, zigzagged across the sky, then zip, it disappeared. Distance-wise, it was really far away, above where you would see a plane flying. My dad yells, "Hey, did you see that?" And then we were screaming down the drop. No idea what it was. It moved with a quickness and precision I hadn't seen in any flying vehicle, and my dad and I were both sober, so I'm sticking with aliens. Saw multicolor changing lights in the sky that was moving in a random trajectory and then just went off at a surreal speed. This was in early 2000s at night in a public area and none of us were intoxicated. Families were present. Sadly it wasn't the age of smartphones. I was at a forest, hiking with my parents, and I saw a pink diamond ring on the ground. I'd say roughly 1 carat. Dropped it in tall grass. Never found it. The ring wanted to be found, but not by you. About a month ago, I was sleeping over at my boyfriend's house. I randomly woke up in the middle of the night to find my BF kneeling at the foot of the mattress with his face smushed into the bed. I shook him and loudly called his name twice and he crawled back into bed with me. The next morning, I was telling him what happened and he said he doesn't remember. He has an app on his phone that records snoring, talking, etc. when he sleeps. But there was no recording of me calling his name, only us snoring and his dog barking. It's the weirdest thing, and I still feel certain that it happened. Maybe you were dreaming. I've told this story a million times and I wish someone would invent time travel so I could go back and catch this person. When I was a kid, around 9, I was on my grandfather's farm which was massive. It stretched in 4 acres and acres. I went off exploring one day with my house and I came across this massive ditch. It used to be a lake before it was dried up. I fell into this ditch and hit everything on the way down. I ended up breaking my leg. So I'm at the bottom of this ditch and I'm screaming for help hoping someone would bear me. And I swear to God, I look up and I see this redhead girl staring down at me. She doesn't say anything, but she's just looking at me. I start calling to get her attention and she just takes off and leaves me. Hours later my grandfather would find me when he came looking because my horse was wandering around the area. And to this day, I can't explain who this girl was or where she came from. 17 years later and I still don't know. I just wanna know what the horse was wondering about. A movie, very late at night, set in a restaurant kitchen. The actors were the foods, with full body makeup. It was a love story between a fish and a salad, if I remember correctly, that want to be eaten at the same time, in the same recipe dish so they can spend the afterlife together forever. It was very weird. BTW if someone else has seen it too. I would love to know the title. 3 featuring White Owl. Had to stop my car BC it was blocking the road at night. From a distance I thought it was a woman in a night robe maybe checking her mail in the middle of the night. Mind trying to justify what I was seeing I guess. Once I came to a full stop it flew away but was def at eye level with me in the car about 15 featuring away. I once found what looked to be a skeleton or fossil of a weird looking animal at the beach. IDK if it's an animal known to science, but it looked nothing like anything I've ever heard of. Probably an invertebrate, with a long, conical body made up of little thin segments, if I recall correctly. Also had 2 front legs, but no back legs. I remember a head with 2 bulbous growths coming out of it, looks kinda like a fly's head. I played around with it and then threw it away. This is a memory from when I was a little kid though, so like 70/30 likelihood I'm remembering it wrong or it was a dream, but it is quite a vivid recollection. Sounds like a lobster skin left over from molting. I've had a few things in my possession duplicate themselves but everyone thinks I'm crazy. The first instance was a dog food scoop. I had 2 of them. My dog chewed one up. I threw away the chewed one and about a week later there is suddenly 2 again. I was very confused because the scoops came special with the containers I have and I only have 2. Then the second time was when I accidentally threw away my vape charger. So I got a new one. Then about a week later in my junk drawer right next to the new vape charger there was a duplicate. The third time was the weirdest. I was standing next to someone and we were getting ready to light candles to sing Silent Night at a Christmas event. I needed to do something so I threw her lighter in my bag for a second. When I fished it out there were 2 identical lighters. Both a weird miniature size grey lighter. And I don't smoke. I don't own any lighters except a regular size yellow one I use for candles so it's never in my purse. Also want to add I don't have house guests and the only person I live with is my boyfriend who works night shift and does not have the time to go out and buy things. So these items literally came out of nowhere. You're the opposites to me. I had a pair of jeans that I threw on the floor one night before bed, and when I woke up they were gone. Just gone. I never saw them again. I was into decorating back then and had sewn some shiny jewel things on them, so they were uniquely identifiable. A shadowy figure that walked towards my room when I called my BF's name. 2 minutes after staring at the door waiting for him to come into the room I assumed he was hiding to the right of the door, so I went out to see if he was there and nope. He was in his chair, at the end of the hall. He never heard me calling. He never got up. Also a UFO. I took a few pictures with an old Kodak camera that had 5 MPX but as you can probably guess, the photos looked like butt. I legit stood by the window for hours watching it floating there, waiting for it to move, and the fricking thing to literally vanish before my eyes. Last fall my ex-BF, self-diagnosed covert narcissist, pushed me down 14 stairs. We lived with other people who had heard everything that happened. While I laid face up at the bottom of the stairs with my hair stuck in the crack my head put in the wall, I watched him look over his shoulder, put his hands on the banister and slide down while dragging his feet. He made verbal sounds so it would sound like he was falling. He sat gently on the bottom stair, looked up again to see no one, then laid on top of me and started groaning and asking if I was okay. All I could do was scream for him to get off of me. Although the upstairs roommates were aware that things in the relationship were not okay, he was able to convince them I'm crazy and a liar. But no one has ever believed that. I know what I saw. I believe you. I was on a walk with my sister in Southern California Inland Empire area when I looked up and saw the biggest bird I have ever seen in my life sitting on a chimney, like it was humongous. I tried to tell my sister, OMG, look up there, there's a huge bird, but my sister literally would not look because she thought I was going to do a "ha made you look" sort of thing and didn't want to be gullible. I literally got so frustrated because she wouldn't look, and I didn't have a phone back then, it was like 2011, so I couldn't get a picture of it. To this day I have no idea what kind of bird it was. California condor has like a 15-foot wingspan. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.